In this video, I'll give you a couple gift ideas from one woodworker to another. On my wife's side of the family, we draw names for our Christmas gift exchange each year. This year, I drew my brother-in-law's name. So Josh, if you're watching this before Christmas, you know nothing about it. Josh has been known to make sawdust from time to time, so I decided to make him a marking knife and a marking gauge. These are two tools that come in very handy in the shop, and it doesn't hurt to have more than one of each. I made this marking gauge several years ago out of a dowel and a block of wood. It's functional, but not super accurate. So, a few years ago, I bought this one. And not too bad. I think I picked it up for about 20 bucks. It's okay. It's somewhat accurate. But then I found this kit on taytools.com. Not sponsored, but I really like their tools. Now, this thing, whenever the idea was that it was going to be a gift, but then I got to using it, and I like it better than the other one that I bought. So, I kept it, with the idea that I'd make another one as a gift later on. And so, that day is today. This one is nice because it cuts a little better, it's a little more accurate, and I really enjoy using it. Plus, it's also handy to have two of them. You can set one to one measurement and the other to another, and then that way you're not having to switch back and forth. That's where errors tend to happen. So then I also decided to make a marking knife. Now, I made this one a couple years ago. This was the first knife that I made. Now, most people probably would not like this handle. I shaped it to fit my hand. I enjoy using it. It's a good knife. So I bought a kit to make another one. So with all that out of the way, let's get to the bench. So I dug through my stack of hardwoods, exotic and otherwise. I came up with some sapele, walnut, ash for a lighter color, some purple heart because it's purple, bloodwood because this is one of my favorite exotic woods, and then some wenge, just because I want to be able to say wenge. I'm going to start by going to my bandsaw and cutting some thin strips off of each one of these boards. Set up a little rip fence, about 3/16 of an inch, and then I'll cut one piece at a time. Next, I'll use my block plane to clean up the tooth set left behind by the bandsaw blade. This block plane is one that used to belong to my grandpa. I found it in an old box of tools. It was all rusty, so I took and restored it. It is a really nice tool. I believe it's a Stanley 227. Now, once I get a smooth edge on these, then I'll take them over and glue them all together. I did purposely leave some of these long so that whenever I go to flatten this later, I can eliminate some of the snipe left behind by my planer. Once the glue dries, I will take it over to the jointer to get one flat face, and then I will take it over to the planer to make the other side parallel. Then, using my marking gauge and an old school compass, I will mark out the shape for the new marking gauge. And whenever I say this is an old school compass, it means from when I was in school a long time ago. I don't remember if this is one from grade school or possibly one from high school. I could switch to a smaller blade instead of using this 1/2 inch blade, and I would be able to cut closer to the line a little quicker, but doing it this way is going to be quicker than switching out the bandsaw blade. With this cut to the rough shape, then I can take it to the belt sander and sand the rest of the way down to the line that I marked. Using my sanding mouse, I will ease the edges. Here I found where I've got some tear out in the bloodwood. So I'm going to squirt a little glue in the crack, and then I'll use some of the sawdust to cram in there. I'll rub it in real good, then I'll sand it down flat. And you can hardly tell that it's there. Now I'll mark the center so I can drill for the stem. I'll use my punch to mark for the hole. Then I'll use an 8mm bit, because that's the size of the stem. I'll drill most of the way through. Then I'll flip the block over, use that hole from the brad point bit to drill the rest of the way through. That will keep me from tearing it out on either side. Using a 3/8 bit, I will turn the block on end and I will drill for the threaded insert. I'll drill it to about a 1/2 inch depth, checking it with my caliper to make sure that my depth gauge is still working like it's supposed to. And then once it's drilled deep enough, I'll switch over to a 5/16 bit to drill for the set screw. Now I'm going to install the threaded insert. To install these, I like to take a bolt and run it all the way through so that I can use the threads from the bolt to line up with the other hole. That will make sure that this threaded insert goes in straight. Then I'll mix up some 2-part epoxy. Normally I would use CA glue for this, but I don't have any available at this time. So I'll mix this up so I can use it to lock in the threads. So I'll smear just a little bit on the threads, and then I'll run it down flush. I'll use my box end wrench to tighten it all the way down. And then I'll run in the set screw to make sure that it goes all the way in. Applying the stem to make sure that it'll hold tight. And then I'll give it a final sanding with some 220 sandpaper, just to ease the edges a little. And now I'll put it back together again. But this time I'm going to install the cutter. So I'll cut the cutter and the screw out of the package, screw it onto the end. And now I'm going to test it out. So I'll set the height, scribe into my workpiece, and it's right on line. I decided I wanted to use my countersink bit to add a little bit of a recess that will protect the cutter head whenever the stem is fully collapsed. And here it is, the finished product. If you're enjoying this video, please hit like and subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when a new video comes out. With the marking gauge done, now it's time to start on the marking knife. So I'll open the marking knife with my other marking knife. Before I get too far, I'm going to tape up the blade and the sides of the tang to make sure that I don't damage the blade or scratch up the tang whenever I'm shaping the knife. I will shape the scales on the belt sander, which can be pretty aggressive. I will use my marking knife to trim up the tape so that I don't have any overlap underneath the scales. I'm going to use another piece of the block that I made the marking gauge out of. I'm going to turn the tang a little bit at an angle so that I can display more of these species of wood. If I put it on straight, I'll only be able to see 2 or 3 pieces, and that's not what I'm going for. After I scribe a pencil line around the tang, then I'll use some double stick tape to affix the tang to the block of wood. This is in preparation for drilling the holes for the rivet pins. So I'll drill the holes for the rivet pins in 2 steps. I'll drill one slightly smaller than the pre-drilled holes that are in the tang, and then I will drill the hole the size of the rivet pin without the tang in place. So I'll remove the tang from the block, and then I'll take it over to the bandsaw where I will cut close to the line that I drew earlier. Once I get everything assembled, then I will be able to take it over to the belt sander and finish shaping down to the line. Here I'm using my marking gauge to mark the center of these scales so that I can saw it in two. Now, rather than finding the exact center with my marking gauge, I'll mark one line and then I'll flip it around and mark it again, and then I will cut between the two lines. So here I'll mix up some 2-part epoxy to affix the scales to the tang. After I mix it up, then I'll spread it out, making sure that I get good coverage. And I'll beat the rivet pins into place, fasten the other scale. Now, I highly recommend using gloves when working with epoxy. I couldn't find any, so I did without. It's a mistake on my part. You can learn something from anyone, even if it's what not to do. So once I get everything kind of fit together, I'll use this clamp to finish drawing up the gaps. Unlike regular wood glue, this doesn't need to be under clamping pressure for at least an hour. The epoxy will do the bonding. I'll set that aside to dry. Now it's done. Using my dovetail saw, I'll clean up the shoulders on the scales, being careful not to scratch up the tang with the teeth on the dovetail saw. So I'll take the knife over to my belt sander, where I can start working this thing down to its final shape. I'll slightly rotate the knife so that I can work in different places. If I hold it too much in one spot, I'll take off too much at one time, and I've come too far to do that at this point. Now that I've got the knife to the final shape, then I can peel back the tape that I put on the tang earlier. Then a little bit of final hand sanding to ease any edges that I missed with the belt sander. And here we go, a finished knife. So this was a really fun project to make. For those of you that are still watching, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already clicked like and subscribe, please do so. Click the bell notification to be notified when a new video comes out. Thanks. Until next time, be safe.